politician under house arrest. We'll be getting the details with our correspondent in New York in this program. Barack Obama hosts Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. The two men hold talks in a particularly tense context amid a strong disagreement over Israel's final borders. And activists say 34 people were killed in Syria in another day of protests. One child is among the victims as violence flares up in Daraa, in Homs, Latakia and other cities. Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. Before we get to these top stories of the day, we begin with an update on world markets. The New York Stock Exchange has just closed for the weekend. We can get the latest figures from our correspondent on Wall Street, Remy Blair. Remy.
Well, Wall Street is ending Friday's trading session in negative territory following a two-day advance. The major U.S. stock averages are closing lower by at least 0.5%. It was a quiet day on the economic calendar, but the latest earnings from retailers and some M&A action was being digested. Now the Dow is closing lower by minus 0.7% at 12,512. The Nasdaq Composite Index also saw downward pressure falling by minus 0.7% to settle at 2803, while the S&P 500 fell by minus 0.7% to close at 1333. Now taking a closer look at the earnings out from retailers, shares of Gap tumbled over 17% on the session. The retailer cut its outlook for the rest of this year. Meanwhile, another retailer, Aeropostale, slid by 14% after sales results missed forecasts. Several brokerage firms also cut its price target for the team retailer. And in some M&A news, Barnes & Noble shares soared by over 31%. Liberty Media offered Barnes & Noble to acquire Barnes & Noble in a deal worth $1 billion or $17 a share. And LinkedIn does remain in focus a day after its successful IPO. Shares did soar by as much as 9%, but they are closing lower by 1%. And over in the foreign exchange market, the U.S. dollar is ending higher against the euro, while we're seeing that it is ending flat against both the pound and the yen. Over in commodities, gold and oil futures paired earlier session, a weakness to close higher. Oil added 1.1% on the session to settle at $99.49 a barrel, while gold futures added 1.1% to settle at $1508.90 an ounce.
Thanks very much for that update on markets. Our correspondent Remy Blair reporting there from Wall Street. And we're staying in New York for our top story of this evening. The New York judge has ordered Dominique Strauss-Kahn be released from jail. This after bail was posted for the former IMF chief and after a temporary location was decided on where he will stay on house arrest. Now, this all comes a day after Dominique Strauss-Kahn was indicted for the attempted rape of a hotel maid. He's currently still in New York's Rikes Island jail, waiting to leave. Let's get the very latest from our correspondent Nathan King. He joins us live from Manhattan. Nathan, does this mean Dominique Strauss-Kahn will be released imminently?
We understand that Dominique Strauss-Kahn will be released from Rikers Island in about 2 hours' time. That is 6 o'clock local time here on Friday night in New York. He will be taken by the Department of Corrections to an area not far from here, right inside the ring of steel that surrounds Ground Zero. He's going to be right at the tip of Lower Manhattan. It's going to be temporary housing. He's only going to stay there for about 3 or 4 days. Why? Well, they're having problems getting somewhere for him to live over the next few months. Remember, he was meant to be staying at the swanky Bristol set of apartments on the Upper East Side. They reneged on that. They said, no, we don't want to do that anymore, largely because of us lot. 300 or so media camped outside, and some media tried to penetrate the Bristol, and so they revoked the rental there. So he will be moved by the Department of Corrections to there, and because it's only temporary, 3 or 4 days, said the security company that are looking after him, he will not be permitted to leave at all that temporary housing. Now, once he gets something a bit more stable, he will be allowed to leave from time to time for doctor's visits, for religious services, and also for court appearances, although he has to give the people, that is the court, 6 hours notice. And if he wants to leave between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., he cannot unless it is a medical emergency. So these are pretty stringent. We learned more about visits. It's a little more leeway than we were led to believe before. He will be allowed 4 visitors at one time. Of course, the guards can stop those visitors if they are suspicious, but 4 visitors at one time means basically his legal team can meet with him, friends and family as well. He will be wearing an electronic bracelet. There will be armed guards. The judge was a little concerned at this temporary location that there weren't any cameras on the front entrance of the building, but he has taken the security company's word that the place is secure. We don't have the exact location at the moment, but as I just reported, it's going to be in the ground zero area of Manhattan, just about half a mile from the court where we stand right now.
And we are, of course, keeping a close eye on that Rikers Island prison where Dominique Strauss-Kahn is supposed to leave in a few moments, a couple hours' time there, and to head to that detention place in Lower Manhattan. These are the live pictures that are coming up on our viewers' screens. We will be taking you live, of course, to Rikers Island as soon as Dominique Strauss-Kahn is leaving. Back to you, Nathan. There were 2 elements that needed to be worked out before Dominique Strauss-Kahn could leave jail. On the one hand, these security arrangements about where he would be staying on house arrest. And on the other hand, bail needed to be posted. It was posted by his wife. And you found out earlier in a particular forum, Anne Sinclair posted $6 million total in cash. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's quite incredible how quickly this legal team have put together this bail application, and also how desperately quickly they needed to do it. Remember, in the filings, they were meant to put up their Washington, D.C. house as surety, about $4 million, but they couldn't get the house valued, they couldn't get the documents ready. So Anne Sinclair, in the end, wired $5 million of her own money. Dominique Strauss-Kahn's wife wired $5 million of her own money to the court behind me. That is probably one of the biggest spousal bailouts in history. She obviously really believes in the innocence of her husband, and another $1 million in cash was paid as well up front. That $5 million, of course, makes up the bail bond. But quite incredible that was wired in cash from Anne Sinclair's account.
And what comes next, Nathan, in this procedure? When is the next hearing? What are the next steps?
Yeah, the judge always just said, actually, that the next court date holds. It's going to be June 6th. However, this is what he wants from Dominique Strauss-Kahn in the next 24 hours. He wants a written affidavit by Dominique Strauss-Kahn to say that he agrees to his bail terms, and that if he goes against them or disobeys any orders of the court in any way, that those bail terms will be revoked, and he could end up back in Rikers Island or a similar penitentiary facility here in New York. It was interesting, before actually all this was granted and the release was granted, the district attorney, the prosecutors, still argued that they wanted to keep Dominique Strauss-Kahn in jail. They said the proper arrangements had not been put in place. They said all that they were thinking of really was getting their client out and the immediate comfort of Dominique Strauss-Kahn, and they were extremely worried about the effect of Dominique Strauss-Kahn going down to ground zero, half a mile from here, on the local population. They said a lot more police are going to have to be brought in. It's a tourist area, and there's us lot to consider as well. Hundreds of media decamping from where we thought he was going to stay all the way down to ground zero, and from the courthouse as well. In fact, the judge did warn the media to really do our jobs, but also make sure that we allow life to continue in downtown Manhattan as much as possible as well. And Dominique Strauss-Kahn's lawyer just appeared on the steps behind me a few minutes ago and actually asked the media to give them privacy during this time and to keep back a little bit. I don't necessarily think that's going to be adhered to, but I think what the judge has said will filter down to the police force here, and we're going to find it pretty difficult to get close. But, you know, we'll try, obviously, without interfering with the law or with the people here in Lower Manhattan.
Well, thanks very much for that, Nathan King, reporting from New York. And I have to say, we here at the France 24 newsroom cannot complain. Thanks for keeping us updated half hour by half hour on what is going on at that courthouse in Manhattan. Just a reminder to our viewers of the top news of this evening. The New York judge has ordered Dominique Strauss-Kahn be released from Rikers Island jail. You can see these live pictures coming up there of that detention facility in Rikers Island. Dominique Strauss-Kahn set to leave that prison with within moments, within a couple of hours, we'll be bringing you the live pictures, of course, as he leaves. Well, it is Dominique Strauss-Kahn's wife, Anne Sinclair, who posted bail for him today. A former television presenter, Sinclair is one of France's most famous journalists. She's also the heiress to a considerable family fortune she can draw upon. Take a look.
$1 million, plus $5 million to act as insurance made up in bonds. The price to pay in New York if you're the head of a global finance organization accused of sex crimes and want to post bail. Although the head of the International Monetary Fund, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, doesn't have that sort of money at his disposal. His annual salary is almost 300,000 euros plus an allowance of over 50,000 from the IMF. So it's lucky his third wife, Anne Sinclair, has a considerable personal fortune. There are some who would say Anne Sinclair's more famous than her husband. She used to draw large audiences as France's leading interviewer for current affairs television.
Bonsoir, les jours qui viennent sont déterminants.
But a large chunk of her wealth comes from her grandfather, the legendary art collector Paul Rosenberg. Rosenberg used to represent Picasso and Matisse, among others, before fleeing to New York to escape the Nazi persecution of the Jews in the 1940s. Anne Sinclair married DSK in 1991. When he became French finance minister in 1997, she sacrificed her career for her husband's. 14 years later, she's having to make further sacrifices to keep him out of jail.
Well, for another reaction to this story, I'm joined now by Fabrice Schmidt, lawyer at the Paris and New York bars. Mr. Schmidt, thanks for being with us on France 24 to give us your view of this procedure underway. Now, Dominique Strauss-Kahn is going to be under some pretty strict house arrest conditions. Can you perhaps give us some details about these conditions and why so severe? Is he really a serious flight risk for the U.S.?
Well, he won't be anymore, actually, with the bail order that has been rendered by the judge. Actually, I didn't have a copy of the bail order, but I understand that the bail order will be pretty strict and very similar to what Bernard Madoff was under home. There will be home detention, 24 hours a day. I understand that he will have to wear an ankle bracelet. We also have to be watched by a security guard all the time, and there will be video surveillance at the same time. Pretty much